There is a strange and maddening type of psychological crime scene. A boundary has been crossed. A trust has been broken. You have been hurt. The evidence is clear. The wound in your heart is fresh. But when you, the victim, finally gather the courage to point to the crime, something bewildering happens. The perpetrator looks at you with wide, innocent eyes, and in a stunning act of emotional alchemy, they become the victim, and you, the one who was wounded, are suddenly put on trial as the accused. Your pain is reframed as an attack. Your feelings are labeled as an overreaction. Your reality is denied. You are left standing in the rubble of your own sanity, holding the smoking gun of a crime you did not commit, while the person who pulled the trigger weeps about the sound of the gunshot. This is the profoundly disorienting and crazy-making experience of dealing with a person who acts like a victim after they have hurt you. If you have ever been in this situation, you know the silent madness it can induce. You begin to question everything. Did I remember it wrong? Am I the one who is too sensitive? Am I the real problem here? This is not a simple argument. It is a sophisticated and deeply toxic form of psychological manipulation, whether it is conscious or not. It is a form of gaslighting designed to dismantle your reality and protect the fragile ego of the perpetrator. But what if you could finally understand the mechanics of this dark magic? What if you could be given the psychological insight to see this pattern not as a reflection of your own flaws, but as a predictable and tragic drama playing out in their own wounded psyche? This video will hand you the magnifying glass and the forensic toolkit to understand this crime scene perfectly. Drawing on the deep and compassionate wisdom of Carl Jung, we will reveal the psychological reason why a person who has hurt you will so often cast themselves in the role of the victim. This is not a lesson in how to win the argument. It is a guide to reclaiming your sanity. You will learn to recognize the pattern, to understand its unconscious roots, and most importantly, you will learn how to walk away from the courtroom forever, not as the accused, but as the one who finally knows the truth. The first step to reclaiming your sanity from this confusing dynamic is to give a name to the invisible madness, to move it from a bewildering feeling into a recognizable pattern. This behavior, where the person who has hurt you suddenly and convincingly acts as if they are the one who has been wronged, is a classic psychological maneuver. We will call it the victim reversal. The victim reversal is a ruthlessly effective and often unconscious strategy with three primary goals. First, it is an act of radical accountability evasion. The perpetrator, whose ego is often incredibly fragile, cannot bear the psychological weight of being the bad guy. The shame of having done something wrong is so intolerable that their psyche must, in an act of desperate self-preservation, immediately find a way to offload that shame. Second, it is a tool for narrative control. By casting themselves as the victim, they perform a brilliant and devastating trick of redirection. The conversation is no longer about their hurtful action. The original crime is erased from the record. The new topic, the one now being debated in the courtroom, is the hurt you have supposedly caused them by pointing out their behavior. They have changed the subject from their action to your reaction, and once you are debating your own reaction, you have already lost. Third, it is a way to elicit narcissistic supply. The perpetrator turns their wrongdoing into an opportunity to be cared for, to be soothed, to have your energy and attention focused back on them and their supposed pain. You, the actual victim, are manipulated into becoming the caretaker of your own abuser. Think of this dynamic as a form of psychological judo. Judo is the art of using an opponent's own force and momentum against them. You come forward with the legitimate force of your own hurt feeling. But the master of the victim reversal, in a swift and disorienting move, uses the momentum of your own vulnerability to flip you onto your back, leaving you stunned, confused, and suddenly on the defensive. Let's watch this judo match in slow motion. Imagine a simple scenario. You say to your partner with a calm and vulnerable "I feel" statement, "It really hurt my feelings earlier when you dismissed my opinion in front of our friends." This is a clean and honest expression of your emotional reality, but to the person who cannot take accountability, your vulnerability is seen as an attack. And the victim reversal begins. First comes the denial and the counterattack. He will not acknowledge your feeling. He will immediately attack the premise. I can't believe you're bringing this up now and ruining a perfectly good evening. I was just joking around. You're always so sensitive. Notice, the conversation is already no longer about your feeling. It is now about your bad timing and your oversensitivity. Then comes the reversal itself. He will cast himself as the true victim of your supposed attack. And frankly, it's hurtful to me that you would think I would ever intentionally embarrass you. I feel like I can't do anything right around you. It's like I have to walk on eggshells because you're always looking for a reason to be upset. And there it is. In the space of 2 sentences, you have been transformed. You are no longer the person who was hurt. You are now the unreasonable, overly sensitive attacker who has hurt him with your unfair accusations. You are no longer the victim. You are the perpetrator. He is no longer the perpetrator. He is the victim of your constant criticism. This is the victim reversal. It is a crazy-making and profoundly effective tactic, and it is born from a deep, dark, and terrified place in the human psyche. Now that we have named the dynamic, we must journey deeper and ask the central question, why? Why does a person do this? The answer is not that they are simply a liar. The truth is far more complex and tragic. The victim reversal is a desperate survival mechanism of a fragile ego that cannot bear the weight of its own shadow. As Carl Jung taught, the shadow is the unconscious repository for everything we have disowned about ourselves. It is the dark basement where we lock away our insecurities, our cruelty, our failures, our shame. A psychologically healthy person has a relationship with their shadow. They know the basement exists. They may not like what is down there, but they do not deny its reality. A person with strong narcissistic traits, however, lives in a different kind of house. Their ego is a fragile glass palace, built on the illusion of their own perfection. Their entire sense of self depends on this palace remaining flawless and pristine. For them to acknowledge a flaw, to admit a wrongdoing, is not just a moment of humility. It is a catastrophic threat. It is a stone that threatens to shatter the entire glass structure of their identity. When they hurt you, their action creates a moment of undeniable evidence that they are not, in fact, perfect. In that moment, their own shadow, their capacity for cruelty, their lack of empathy, is revealed to them, and they are left holding the unbearable, burning hot potato of their own shame. And this is where the dark magic begins. Because their ego cannot hold this shame, it must get rid of it immediately and completely. The first step is simple projection. They throw the hot potato at you and shout, "You are the one who is burning. You are the cruel one for pointing out my flaw." But the victim reversal often goes a step further into a more insidious psychological mechanism known as projective identification. This is not just about them accusing you of their own sin. It is an unconscious and masterful manipulation to make you feel the very shame they cannot tolerate. They will poke and prod and gaslight and twist your words until you are so confused and full of self-doubt that you begin to believe you are the problem. The moment you begin to feel guilty, the moment you start to apologize, they feel an immense sense of relief. They have not just thrown the hot potato, they have successfully placed it in your hands, and you are now the one who is burning. This is the heartbreaking Jungian insight. You are not going crazy. You are being unconsciously used as an emotional and psychological container for the shame they cannot carry themselves. Your confusion is a symptom of their successful projection. The guilt you feel is his guilt, which he has successfully outsourced to your more compassionate and receptive nervous system. Understanding this is not about excusing his behavior, it is about depersonalizing it. His attack on you, his transformation into the victim, is not a reflection of your character. It is a desperate and tragic act of a soul so terrified of its own shadow that it must force another to live in its darkness. Now that we understand the psychology of the perpetrator, we must turn the lens with equal compassion to the other side of this tragic dance. Why are you so susceptible to this dynamic? Why do you so often find yourself holding the hot potato of their shame? The answer is not that you are weak or foolish, or that you enjoy being a victim. The answer is that you were likely cast in this role from a very young age. You are what is known as an empathic container, An empath is a person whose nervous system is naturally more porous and attuned to the emotional states of others. It is not just a personality trait, it is a physiological reality. You don't just sympathize with other people's feelings, on some level you absorb them. Your greatest gift is your immense capacity for compassion and understanding. But the shadow side of this gift, if you do not have strong boundaries, is that you can become an unconscious dumping ground for the unresolved emotions of the people around you. Think of a person who is not an empath as a stone wall. When the narcissist throws their toxic shame, it simply bounces off. The stone wall is not receptive, but you, the empath, you are not a stone wall. You are a deep, beautiful, and highly absorbent sponge. Your very nature is to take in what is around you, to feel it, and to try to understand it. And so the tragic dynamic is set. The narcissist, the person who is desperately searching for a place to pour their unbearable shame, unconsciously scans the world for a receptive vessel. And you, the empathic container, are a walking, open and absorbent vessel. You are a perfect, tragic fit, a lock and a key. You were not chosen because you were weak. You were chosen because you were open. This pattern likely began in your childhood. You may have been the emotional container for your entire family. You were the one who could sense your mother's unspoken sadness, your father's hidden anger. You learned to absorb the tension in the room to keep the peace. You became a masterful caretaker of everyone else's feelings while learning to neglect your own. And now, in your adult relationships, you continue to play this role. When the man you are with acts out in a way that hurts you, and then immediately reverses it to act like the victim, your empathic nature kicks in. You feel his supposed pain. You absorb his projected guilt. Your deep, compassionate desire to understand and to heal him overrides your own legitimate anger and hurt. You stop being a victim who needs defending, and you become a caretaker for your own abuser. This is the core of the dynamic. He cannot hold his own shame, so he projects it. You, the empathic container, absorb it, believing it is your job to hold it for him. But here is the truth that will begin your liberation. His shame is not yours to carry. His darkness is not yours to heal. And your greatest gift, your empathy, is not a resource to be endlessly depleted by those who refuse to do their own inner work. Your sensitivity is not the problem. The problem is the lack of a sacred boundary, a lid for your own beautiful and receptive container. Understanding the dynamic of the victim reversal is the map that shows you the layout of the prison. But to actually walk free, you need the key. The key is not a complex strategy. It is a simple, yet profound shift in your energetic posture. It is the practice of learning to stop being the absorbent sponge and instead becoming a flawless mirror. It is the art of returning the projection. This is not an act of aggression. You are not throwing the hot potato of his shame back at him with anger. You are simply and calmly refusing to catch it. You are letting it fall to the ground between you, the ground where it rightfully belongs. This is a practice to be used in the real-time moment of an interaction when you feel the psychological judo of the victim reversal begin. It has 3 steps. First, observe, don't absorb, the recognition. The moment he begins the reversal, the moment he denies his action, attacks your sensitivity, and casts himself as the victim, your first and most crucial task is to simply and silently name the dynamic to yourself. Your inner monologue, with the calm voice of the wise woman you are, should be, there it is, the reversal. He is feeling shame, and he is now handing it to me. This simple internal act of observation is a revolutionary act of power. It creates a sacred pause, a space between his action and your conditioned reaction. You are no longer an unconscious participant in the drama, you are a conscious witness to the pattern. By seeing the game, you are no longer a player in it. Second, the internal statement, the energetic boundary. Before a single word leaves your mouth, you must set an internal, energetic boundary. While he is speaking, while he is performing his role as the victim, you must hold your own center. You do this with a silent, powerful affirmation. Whisper it to your own soul. This shame is not mine to carry. This guilt does not belong to me. I do not consent to being the container for this. This is not just a thought. It is an energetic declaration. You are in that moment making a sovereign choice. You are closing the lid on the empathic container. You are transforming yourself from the absorbent sponge into the reflective mirror. You are calling your own energy back to yourself, refusing to let it be contaminated by his projection. Third, the verbal boundary, the calm response. Only after you have recognized the pattern and set your internal boundary do you speak. And your words will not be a defense. They will not be an argument. They will be a simple, calm, and powerful reflection of the truth that you and he are having two completely different experiences of reality. Your response will be a short, disengaging phrase that refuses to accept the role of the perpetrator. For example, "I understand that's how you see it. It sounds like you were very hurt by what I said." We clearly have two very different perceptions of what just happened. Notice what these phrases do. They do not argue with his reality. They do not say, "You're wrong." They simply acknowledge his perception as his perception, while you remain firmly anchored in your own. You are not accepting his shame. You are handing it back to him, not by throwing it, but by refusing to take it from him in the first place. You are holding up a mirror, and in that mirror, he is left alone with his own reflection. When you begin to consistently practice the sovereign response, when you refuse to absorb his projection, the entire foundation of the toxic dynamic begins to crumble. The outcome is not that he will suddenly change and see the error of his ways. The outcome is far more profound. The outcome is that you reclaim your own reality. Gaslighting, the very essence of the victim reversal, is a form of psychological colonization. The perpetrator slowly and systematically erodes your trust in your own perceptions, your own memory, and your own sanity. His version of reality becomes the dominant one, and you are forced to live as an exile in your own mind. You have been looking at yourself through his distorted funhouse mirror, and you have begun to believe that the twisted, monstrous reflection you see is the real you. The practice of returning the projection is the act of smashing that funhouse mirror. It is the moment you put down his mirror and pick up your own clear, simple hand mirror. It is the radical act of deciding that you will trust your own reflection, your own perception, more than you trust his. What happens when you do this? What is his reaction when his shame is no longer absorbed by you? Very often he will escalate. Deprived of the relief of making you the container, his own unbearable shame will intensify. He may become angrier. He may call you cold, unfeeling, or crazy. He may accuse you of being the real narcissist. And here is the crucial insight. His escalation is not a sign that your practice is failing. It is the undeniable proof that it is working. It is the desperate, panicked tantrum of an ego that has lost its primary tool for managing its own shadow. It is the final, flailing attempt of the game player to pull you back onto the board. But you, the woman who is now anchored in her own reality, will experience this escalation in a completely new way. The old you would have been terrified, would have doubted herself, would have rushed to soothe him. But the new you will observe his tantrum with a quiet, compassionate detachment. The storm is no longer inside of you. It is outside. You can see it for what it is, his storm, not yours. And in this moment, the old, familiar feeling of confusing, anxious panic is replaced by a new, solid, and unshakable feeling. The feeling of clarity, the end of gaslighting. You are no longer a participant in his psychological drama. You are a sovereign observer of your own truth. You have reclaimed your mind. You have reclaimed your sanity. You have reclaimed your reality. And this is the ultimate act of psychological freedom. We began our journey at a confusing and painful psychological crime scene where you were simultaneously the victim and the accused. We have traveled through the dark corridors of the narcissistic psyche, understood the unbearable weight of the shadow, and learned the sovereign response of returning a projection to its rightful owner. And we arrive here at the final, liberating verdict. The victim reversal, this crazy-making dynamic, was never about you. It was never a reflection of your flaws, your sensitivity, or your sanity. It was always and only a tragic and desperate act of a wounded soul trying to escape its own unbearable shame. Let this truth land in your bones. You are not crazy. You are not too sensitive. You are not making things up. You have been a sane person having a perfectly rational reaction to an insane and irrational dynamic. For years you may have been on trial in a courtroom that should never have existed. The verdict is in. You have been acquitted. The case is dismissed. You are free to walk away. The ultimate power you take from this knowledge is not the ability to diagnose him, but the permission to finally trust yourself. It is the power to stand firmly in the center of your own reality, in your own perception, and to know that it is valid, that it is real, simply because it is yours. The ultimate act of sovereignty is to become so anchored in the truth of your own experience that you become the unshakable lighthouse in your own life. And from that place, you will never again be lost in another person's fog.